Ukraine has Putin lost the war before he's even started? My Mark Meets guest is the legendary composer of the War of the Worlds musical. Rock icon Jeff Wayne is live in the studio, and in my big opinion monologue, the so-called friends who dump you for having the wrong views. Well, in my view, they weren't your friends in the first place. It's a busy show, a sparkling 3 hours no less. But first up, the headlines with Miranda.
Thank you, Mark. The top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has spoken to the Ukrainian President this evening, agreeing that the international community needs to isolate Russia completely diplomatically and financially. In a statement, Number 10 said Boris Johnson also paid tribute to Volodymyr Zelensky and his people's incredible heroism. The leaders agreed that President Putin is being met with a greater resistance than he had calculated. Well, an advisor to the Ukrainian president claims 3,500 Russian soldiers have been killed or injured so far. Well, this evening, an air raid siren was heard in the capital as Russian forces targeted the city with artillery and cruise missiles. The mayor of Kiev, Vitaly Klitschko, has imposed a curfew and people have been warned to seek shelter. Earlier, President Zelensky said, "We will fight as long as it takes to liberate the country." He also welcomed a move by European countries to cut Russia off from SWIFT, the global banking system used to assist with payments.
Our diplomats fought around the clock and inspirationally for all European countries to agree on a strong and fair decision to disconnect Russia from the international interbanking network. We have also this important victory. This is billions and billions of losses for Russia, a tangible price for this vile invasion of our country.
Well, the UN Refugee Agency says more than 120,000 Ukrainians have left the country since the invasion began. Drone footage shows an 18-mile-long queue of vehicles on Ukraine's border crossing as thousands try to enter Poland. The aid agency is also warning that fuel, cash and medical supplies are running low in parts of the country, which could drive up to 5 million people to flee abroad. Well, Mark Kovalenko is with thousands of other Ukrainians waiting to cross into Poland.
I want to survive because I have a family in Europe. So right now in Ukraine is a dangerous place because Russian forces come from more, and every day is strange time. USA and NATO don't help us, so we don't have any chosen. We must do.
The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has called for the Russian ambassador to the UK to be expelled. It follows an announcement that the UK would impose personal sanctions on President Vladimir Putin and his foreign minister Sergei Lavrov. The US, Canada and the European Union are also doing the same. And Chelsea Football Club's Russian owner, Roman Abramovich, says he's giving up stewardship of the Premier League side. Mr Abramovich, who bought the London club in 2003, says the trustees of its charitable foundation are in the best position to look after its interests. He will remain as Chelsea's owner, but will not be involved in any of the decision-making. Well, on TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now let's get straight back to Mark Dolan tonight.
It's Saturday, the 26th of February, and you are watching and listening to Mark Dolan tonight. We've got a fabulous Saturday night of live TV entertainment for you. In the big question, what's the point of going to university? Enormous tuition fees, lectures on Zoom even now, debt, no free speech, and no guarantee of employment at the end of it. Would youngsters be better off getting an apprenticeship, training, or going straight into the jobs market? We'll hear from all sides on that one. My Mark Meets guest is the legendary rock superstar Jeff Wayne, writer of the smash hit musical War of the Worlds, as well as many other music hits. Jeff Wayne is live in the studio at 10. Plus, Joe Biden's handling of Ukraine and plastic surgery fails, with the queen of US showbiz and news reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Also, my alternative news headlines, my satirical take on the day's big stories, tonight featuring Prince Harry. Elton John gets a mention as well, and of course, Vladimir Putin comes up once or twice. Also tonight, my all-star panel reacting to the big stories of the day. Presenter and journalist Andre Walker. Look at that, the handsome devil. Close to his target weight now, I'm told. Alice Grant, who is a broadcaster and commentator. And I'm delighted to welcome comedian and podcast host Tommy Sandu. There you go, the dream team. I want to hear from you throughout the show. Speaking of dream team, you are my dream viewers. You know how much I love getting your emails, so get them in between now and 11. mark@gbnews.uk. A big 2 hours to come. Caroline's in the hot seat tonight. It is Saturday evening, so grab something Italian or French out of the fridge, or fire up the kettle and tear open the milk chocolate hobnobs, and let's get to work. Welcome to hell. A senior producer here at GB News, Lucy Jones, who works on the brilliant programme Dan Wootton Tonight, sent the following tweet today, which has understandably gone viral because it's touched a nerve. Take a look at this. It reads as follows. My university friends today messaged me saying they didn't want to invite me to group meetups because of my views on COVID and the company I work for. Let me just repeat that for you. Her university friends messaged her saying they didn't want to invite her to meetups because of her views on COVID and the company she works for. She goes on to say, I really have learned who my real friends are over the last 2 years. Welcome to the age of intolerance. Terribly sad though it is, and deeply unfair and cruel, friends freezing each other out for having the wrong views is not a rare occurrence. Whether it's Brexit or COVID, trans rights or net zero, people are willing to discard years of friendship because they've decided you don't have the right opinions. It's very sad because in many cases, these friendships go back years or even decades. School friends, university pals, colleagues, drinking buddies, the guys you play cricket with on a Sunday morning, the girls in your football team or book club. Think how many shared experiences you'll have had with the people who are now shutting you out. Think of all the parties, that quick drink in the pub that became a whole afternoon or evening. Think of the late night phone calls, the secrets and innermost thoughts shared. Think of the millions of WhatsApp messages, the selfies, the presents, the letters, the notes, the cards. Think of the tears, the laughter and the memories. All of that goes because, I don't know, you thought this country should leave a political bloc based in Brussels. All of that goes because you thought maybe lockdowns have caused more harm than good. All of that goes because you're not sure how people are going to be able to pay for net zero. Or because perhaps you believe that you can identify however you like, but there are just two biological sexes. All of that goes for that. Now, you might find that you're wrong on all of those issues and that your friends were right. Who knows? But when did any of these things become so controversial they were worth the scrapping of years of friendship, of loyalty, time and commitment? It's sad because we give a large portion of our lives and a chunk of our souls to the friends around us. We invest in them only for the funds to now be summarily withdrawn over nothing in this new age of intolerance. For them to so readily discard all of that in the name of closed-minded dogma, which is what it is a sign of the times. It's where we are in 2022. Of course, I've had loads of it over the last couple of years, and I wouldn't change a thing. If questioning the extraordinary, unprecedented measures that we've seen over the last 2 years is controversial, unacceptable, or problematic, if it's problematic to challenge and ask questions, then I can't help you. You may find what's ultimately problematic is you. Since the beginning of time, as a species, we have argued, debated, and through a hard-won common ground, forged a way ahead. Humanity and its unprecedented success has been as a result of the competition of ideas. And that's what happened in schools and universities before many became centres of brainwashing and divisive ideology. And by the way, that's just my opinion. Feel free to disagree. I won't cancel you. And we know about the scale of cancel culture in which perhaps our greatest living author, J.K. Rowling, is being gradually erased for pointing out that there are just two biological sexes, backed up by any encyclopedia or medical textbook you might seek to reference. And people are now cancelling each other, as in the case of Lucy Jones. Friendship groups are ethnically cleansing non-believers, whether it comes to COVID, Brexit, veganism, the environment, trans rights, you name it. And so many who seek this cancellation claim to be liberal. They're just nice, caring people, and anyone that disagrees with them is beastly and evil. Well, I'm afraid not. When it comes to lockdowns, for example, my main objection has been the catastrophic human damage, the suffering that we've seen. To watch once successful businesses shut down, to watch people losing their jobs, to watch kids locked out of school for months on end and not being able to have a kickabout in the park with their mates, to watch people not receiving medical treatment for diseases like cancer because if it's not COVID, they don't care, to watch that and not say anything, to not ask whether this is justified or wise or will even work, that makes you a bad person? That shows a lack of empathy, really? If you've backed all the measures, and like many in the media and politics have asked for more, you may find the absence of empathy is yours, not mine. You could call these people the bad people. Of course, I wouldn't, because it's all about opinions. And no one's got a monopoly on the facts, on the science, on empathy, and no one has got a monopoly on the truth. Which is why we've got to listen to each other more, not less. Expose ourselves to the discomfort of other views. Social media has created these echo chambers in which people are insulated from discussion, debate, and enlightenment. If you're a lefty, you should fill your life up with right-wing people. It will be good for you. And if you're right-wing, you should do just that with those on the political left. Which is how it used to be back in the day. People would vote in general elections. Remember that? Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, Green. The result would happen and hey-ho, your side won. Or they didn't win. And that was the end of it. Whereas now the result of a public vote is just the beginning of years of turf warfare. Exhibit A, Brexit, where an attritional and damaging campaign to reverse the result began the moment it came through. I think the growing popularity of social media, twinned with Brexit, was a turning point. It set the template for the new age of intolerance. So if you've been dropped by friends for your views on anything, then they weren't your friends at all. And if you're one of these people going around cancelling someone fabulous like my colleague and friend Lucy Jones, then you don't realise what you're giving up. Your echo chamber will become an ever more toxic bubble in which you're insulated from not just the fun of debate and maybe learning something and thinking, but you will ultimately be insulated from the truth itself, which is surely something we're all after. In the end, the truth will out. It always does. These supposedly lovely liberals, who are usually the ones doing the cancelling, are in fact deeply illiberal bullies. The cancellation of friends for not being on message, for having the wrong views, the deplorables, as Hillary Clinton famously referred to Trump supporters, is deeply wrong and counterproductive. In the end, Hillary lost, and you may lose too. Those cancelling ultimately risk cancellation themselves. So, if you have lost friends in the last few years at work or within your social circle, count yourself lucky. With friends like those, who needs enemies? Did you like the pin to pause at the end? Thank you, Sebastian and Caroline. With me now, reacting to the big stories of the day, is my amazing panel. By God, we've splashed the cash, but they're worth every penny. Presenter and journalist Andre Walker, political commentator and broadcaster Alice Grant, and comedian, writer and podcaster Tommy Sandu. Tommy Sandu, have you ever lost friends for having the wrong opinions?
Oh, come on, Mark, you know. I was sacked by the BBC about 5 years ago for being involved in a WhatsApp group. And it was actually other people's opinions and other people's messages in those WhatsApp groups that got me sacked. So it was sacking through association to other people's messages. And the theory was, I think, is that I was complicit to those views. And it's funny, your monologue's bang on, because I've always said, I've never felt threatened by other people's views. I've actually quite enjoyed over the years even meeting people that go, I don't really like brown people, or they use stronger language, but you're all right, you know, because I think that's a starting point. I can work with them from there. It's somewhere I can build upon. And it's often you can just, if you have a conversation, if you talk to them, you'll find there's a commonality in all of us, and you can kind of find common ground to kind of share upon. So yeah, you know, I don't really have opinions on anything. I'm just here to have a laugh. I feel like my life's going to start, my life's going to end. Let's just decorate it with humour and good people in the middle. So I never really try to upset anyone and want to have a good time, but it's funny how some people are just scared of even entering that debate, entering that conversation. And like you, I want to surround myself with people of really different views. I think, enrich me. Let me hear where you're coming from, because people fascinate me.
Tommy,
Andre fascinates me.
You could chop my left arm off and I wouldn't cancel you. That's the extent to which I'm a fan of your work, and I consider us friends as well. And by the way, my friendship is non-negotiable and non-refundable, baby.
Done. I'm signed up for life. All right.
And Tommy, what I want to ask you is, you know, it's one thing for a stranger to try to get you cancelled, and I guess it was ever thus, but some of those people on those WhatsApp groups that got you sacked, they will have been colleagues and friends.
Oh, yeah, and, absolutely. And I'm still in touch with them, even though they maybe have opinions and views that are different to me, or even they were making jokes about opinions and views that are different to mine. But I don't believe that an app on a phone, you know, is indicative of your entire personality, particularly when you've been at an organisation for 10 years. I don't know how that is reflective of me, and there's never been any other complaints or anything like that. So it's just funny how people are just so quick to jump to an extreme, to sum you up, to put you in a kind of certain box, because they're scared of kind of trying to actually work out what's really going on, and scared of even entering that. Let's not question it, let's not talk about it, let's not find out what the inner nuance is, particularly in my case of, you know, Asian culture and British Asian culture and the way in which we use language, which is slightly different to others. So, yeah, it's sad. And also there's a lot of people, you know, at the BBC who I was very good friends with, people that came over to my house for Christmas, people that came over to my house for meals, who I cooked for, who I don't hear from anymore. And, you know, that's okay. You said, you learn who your friends are.
Well, look, the BBC's loss is GBNews' gain, Tommy. Andre, this is a sentence I hear a lot. And could there be a more stupid sentence in the world? And so many people have told me, either sort of privately or even on the national television airwaves, I've lost friends because of Brexit. How stupid is that?
Well, do you know something? You're talking about this in your big monologue, but there's another big news story today, and I want to bring the two together. Because let's remember something about an echo chamber where nobody is allowed to have a dissenting view. People in Russia have been force-fed this message that everybody in Ukraine wants a Russian invasion. Vladimir Putin genuinely believes it. The soldiers on the ground genuinely believed it. And that is because anybody who dissented from that view was suddenly cancelled from the Russian airwaves. Well, of course, what's happened in the past 3 days is that the turkeys have come home to roost. In reality, the consensus in Russia, the view of the media elite, the view that was the only thing that could be said, was wrong and went completely unchallenged. Consequently, a huge number of lives are being lost, and it's a disaster for that country. So it's not just about friendship. It's not just about being a bit annoyed or being thrown out of the BBC, though, to be honest, I'd rather work for GBNews, Tommy, so glad you're here. But actually, it can become incredibly dangerous when you look at it on a macro level for an entire country.
Being polite and diplomatic, Alice, you're a touch younger than myself, Andre and Tommy. Do you think this is generational? Is pressure to conform even stronger among young people?
Yeah, I believe that's true. I think young people are seeing all the cancellation that's happening and are probably more scared than ever to voice their opinions, especially if they do not conform to the mainstream narrative. I know in my generation, when my sister and I were campaigning for Brexit, the amount of support that we got from fellow young Brexiteers who said, you know, I would be terrified to voice my support for freedom and sovereignty in my school just because of the overwhelmingly Remain contingent of young people. But I'm very glad that there are other people who can voice those opinions for us. But
Some would say, Alice, that we're overstating this cancel culture, that it's all a myth, that it's been blown up. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, personally, I feel as though as long as we support those who have been so-called cancelled, then really the power is kind of with the consumer in a sense, because it's up to us, it's up to the people ultimately who decide. And we mustn't let big corporations like the BBC bully us into silence or any other big corporations for that matter. And in educational establishments as well, it's very important, I think, to support those who are being targeted, especially if their views are just common sense, really. And what Andre was mentioning about the elite specifically having a certain monopoly on the narrative and then silence and dissenting voices is obviously something that we can see not just in Russia, but sometimes in Britain too. So I think it's very important that we stand up for what we believe in.
No one gets cancelled here, not on my watch. I'm so excited about tonight's panel, who return in a couple of minutes' time. Later this hour, in our news agenda, we'll be looking at Ukraine. Of course, we want to keep you updated on what's happening there. Has Vladimir Putin already lost before he's started? But next, in the big question, is there any point going to university? We'll hear from all sides on that one. I'll see you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Big reaction to my big opinion monologue, which Max is now editing down. It will be on Twitter in the next few minutes. It's all about friends being cancelled for having the wrong views on Brexit, on COVID, on climate change, or any other matter. And this is from Jim, who says, "Hi, Mark. My wife and I have lost friends and become distanced from family for having the wrong views over COVID. GB News in general, specifically Mark Dolan and Dan Wootton, have been a lifesaver." That's very nice of you to say, and thank you for putting me in the heralded company of Dan Wootton, Jim. You've been showing us that we're not alone and that there are others out there who think the same way. That nightly dose of reality has given us hope. Well, look, Jim, your support, your viewership, your emails has given us a lot of strength too. So thank you for that. Do keep them coming. But this show is all about debate. And if you think that there isn't cancel culture, if you think that perhaps people are right to freeze out friends if they think opinions that aren't acceptable to them, maybe that's okay. Maybe that's free speech as well. So do let me know your thoughts, Mark at gbnews.uk. I'll get to more of your emails shortly. Michael Kilbane wants to know where I can get a GB News mug. Yeah, I want to do something about that, actually. I want to start sending out mugs. So leave it with me, Michael, because I think we should share the GB News love. It's time now for the big question in which we tackle a major topic of the day. And tonight, what's the point in going to university? That's right. What is the point in going to university? The Telegraph have reported that the country's most prestigious universities have collectively amassed, wait for it, a surplus of £2.2 billion, according to analysis of their latest annual accounts by the paper. Information obtained under a Freedom of Information request by the Telegraph, in what amounts to a fabulous piece of journalism, by the way, it reveals that the 24 members of the Russell Group were collectively handed over £100 million from the government in furlough money. Vice-chancellors are facing fresh calls to give students a refund, with parents pointing out that youngsters have only been getting a fraction of the normal university experience. So, with enormous tuition fees, debt, precious little free speech, and no guarantee of employment at the end of it, would youngsters be better off getting an apprenticeship, training, or going straight into the jobs market? Send me your thoughts, Mark at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at gbnews in our Twitter poll, which is up now. So we'll get you the results of that shortly. Is there any point going to university? To discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome actor and commentator Femi Nylander, and live from the States, Kenny Xu, a podcast host and author of a new book all about universities. It's called Inconvenient Minority: The Attack on Asian American Excellence and the Fight for Meritocracy. Gentlemen, welcome to GB News. And if I could start with you, Femi, what's the point in going to university?
Well, I think university is always supposed to be a school, place of learning, a place of debate, a place where people can develop themselves further. The problem that we've seen generally is that university has only been accessible to certain parts of the population. So traditionally, university was only available to certain parts of the population who were privileged in some way or the other. And it's opened up more. But with it opening up more, we have also seen this hike in tuition fees. We've seen, as you say, a large chunk of change going to particular Russell Group universities that are privileged above other universities in many ways. And really, we've also seen, to a degree, the degrees people are having meaningless in the job market. But I don't think university necessarily should be about just getting a job. And what we have seen is the corporatization of degrees. So you go to university just to hopefully get out and get this corporate degree. And university, like school, should be a place of learning where people debate and where people grow. And I think that people should still be going to university, and we should still be having people going to university. We should still be having this area for debate and this area beyond school. But the way that it's happening at the moment, with these huge fees, with this huge amount of debt the students are saddled with, and with the focus on an outcome which needs to be clearly profitable, is not ideal, if that makes sense.
Shu, what is the point in going to university? It's fantastic if you want to become a lawyer or doctor, but most of us don't need it, do we?
Yeah, I think you're right. Look, the university costs in America these days, some universities charge $70,000 a year to go to universities. That's insane. You're putting yourself $250,000 in debt before you even have your first job. At the very least, go get a job. First, try out the experience, try out the working world. I say this, by the way, as an author, as a journalist, as someone who went to university. Now, I think every parent should educate their child to the point where they're able to get into a university. No doubt in my mind, absolutely. But when it actually comes to the decision to go to university, I think that the universities have gotten so corrupt, especially in the field of excellence, in excellence-related fields, that they have stopped prioritizing excellence and started to become just a kind of social gathering. If you want a social gathering, you can start your own social gathering, or you can go, there are many other places you can do it. But if you want real education, I think you need to learn some skills in the real world. I think you should go to a trade school. You should go get your first job. And maybe if you don't like it, if you really want the intellectual experience, if you really want to be a lawyer or a doctor, yes, then you should definitely consider university. But I think for the majority of people in the world, you should definitely start out your life learning a practical skill.
Tell me about your fascinating book, which is called Inconvenient Minority, the attack on Asian American excellence and the fight for meritocracy. In the book, you suggest that top universities are keeping out the best students and that being the best is no longer good enough.
This is the point of my book, An Inconvenient Minority. We all hear about Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. We all hear they're the best colleges in the entire world. Did you know that the so-called best colleges in the entire world routinely keep out people for no reason except for their race? That's right, an Asian American has to score 440 points higher on the SAT, which is the standardized test in America, to have the same chance of admission as a black person, and 150 points higher to have the same chance of admission as a white person. These universities have gotten so woke that they no longer prioritize excellence as the most important factor. They prioritize your race, your gender, and your sexuality. And that's the point of my book. We need to save our country from this anti-excellence woke ideology, and we need to restore a true meritocracy in our country today.
Femi, what do you think about that? Do you think that universities struggle with free speech and indeed meritocracy now?
Well, I would say that universities have always struggled with meritocracy. I would disagree a little bit, though, on the idea that, I don't know much about the fact that there seems to be negative affirmative action in terms of the Asian American case, but I do know that in terms of positive affirmative action for African Americans, that is something to do with historical injustices, which have basically meant that that African Americans have been enslaved and have been segregated up until the 1960s and are very, very poor and have much less likely to have parents who both went to university than white candidates. And that's why you have these things like affirmative action in order to help fix some of these disparities. And actually the biggest affirmative action is things like the legacy system. We talk about the Harvards, we talk about the Yales. These are universities which literally allow you in if your parent went there. So if your parent has gone to Harvard and has probably ended up an investment banker or a lawyer or another big shot job because they went to Harvard, then that gives you an opportunity to go there on the basis that your parent went there, and you're called a legacy student. So I think the biggest question in terms of meritocracy isn't necessarily affirmative action for African Americans and for disadvantaged groups on the woke side, but is the fact that you have at top elite universities a revolving wheel of elitism and a revolving wheel of the wealthiest people going there and then sending their kids there, sometimes even donating money to have a building named after themselves with the tacit understanding that they were going to, that their kids are going to get in. I remember when I was at Oxford, certain people who were involved in certain large companies in South Africa, their children got private tours of Christchurch College. And the reason they got private tours is because the college knew full well that their parents had very, very, very deep pockets and would be able to give donations. So I do agree that the universities have a lot of corruption and that people are getting in not based on merit. But I wouldn't say that measures to help the most disadvantaged in society get in are bad. I would say, though, that you shouldn't have this kind of negative discrimination against Asian Americans in comparison to white students in the States. I think that's a very weird thing for US universities to do if that is the case.
Kenny, I'll come back to you shortly. Let me bring my panel in, if I may. Broadcaster Andre Walker, a journalist and presenter Tommy Sandu, and political commentator Alice Grant. I mean, Andre, in the UK, the big push for going to university came from Tony Blair, and this was aspirational. What's not to like?
Pulling up or shoelace tying. What's happened is we've moved people away from professions where they would earn a lot of money and instead put them into media studies degrees that are completely worthless. I mean, let us remind ourselves that there are more media studies graduates every year than there are media studies jobs in the totality of the market. And so if everyone was fired tomorrow by the BBC, GBNews, ITV, then there would be enough for 1 year's graduates. But I have to say, when you're talking about being stupid, Andrew Breitbart, the great American conservative, once claimed that the only reason that he had sensible political views was when he went to Tulane University. He spent his entire time partying with illicit substances rather than going to the lectures. So that shows you the level at which there is so people are being told what to say and what to do. Look, as far as I'm concerned, the idea that an ordinary working class person would not want to become a plumber and instead work in a call centre after having a degree, I mean, that just doesn't work financially. And I think for them to come out with debt is bad as well. I'll tell you what I'd do, Mark. Really simple. I think people who want to study something specific and go to an elite university like your Oxford and Cambridges of this world should live away from home, and then probably most of us would go for 2-year degrees near our home, live at home and just get on with it. And I think that once you break that idea of university being a life experience and make it purely academic, people will be much more sensible about whether they actually want to do it or not.
Yes, or even 1 year. Alice Grant, what do you think about keeping universities but reforming them?
I think that's a good idea. I also think a lot of money should be put into apprenticeships by the government. I think that schemes like that are extremely helpful and not talked about enough, really. I think young children graduating or teenagers graduating secondary school aren't seeing apprenticeships as a real option, but actually they're fantastic. I myself was considering one before I got into my dream university. So unless I think you're really passionate about a particular subject, or of course you're desperate to go to a certain university, then I think apprenticeships should definitely be promulgated more by the government and by teachers.
Alice, what has your experience of university been like?
Well, I started this year and I'm quite fortunate in the sense that most of my lectures have been in person, but I know for so many of my friends, in London universities especially, where lectures are still online, my sister even at King's College London, and that really does detract from the educative experience. So you're essentially paying for online courses, which is just not ultimately sustainable for so many people. And the debt you're racking up as well at such a young age is quite crippling. And I do think that there should definitely be some reform, or at least a fee reduction.
Tommy Sandu, a lot of this is cultural, isn't it? A bit like home ownership. Why this obsession with everyone going to university?
What, we have to do it for our British Asian mums. You see, and I know, I come from a British Asian Indian household. I have got my degree, so my mum can tell people that he's got a degree. And so when I was getting married, she could say to other aunties that she'd bump into and say, oh, my son has a degree. You know, you should set him up with your daughter. And for that reason, the degree served me well. Honestly, it's a status symbol. I've used my degree just to tell people that I've got a degree. And I think it's sad that it still does carry a bit of weight in conversation. It still does carry a bit of weight when you just meet people to say, oh, you've come from an educated background. But what I'll always say is, you know, you learn so much more at university than just your degree. And I did make the best friends. I did have the best time. And I learned a lot more about organisation skills and things like that. But again, not things that you can't pick up elsewhere in apprenticeships or somewhere else.
Do you know, Mark, I've got a brilliant story from my younger brother who may well be watching this show. He went to Oxford. Now, as you know, if you get a bachelor's from Oxford, after 3 years in business and a payment of 80 guineas, you can have a master's degree as long as you go to the ceremony. He was working at Bank of New York at the time, and they insisted that he got this MA so he could put it on his business card. But we went along to the graduation for a course he'd not done to receive an honour he'd paid 80 quid for. He was going absolutely wild about it, but my mum loved it. She got photos and everything, all the cap and gown, the full regalia. That's the sort of university degree I want. 80 quid and do the ceremony.
Well, there you go. That would do the trick, wouldn't it? What an amazing story. And Tommy, I don't want to know what you learnt at university because it's a family show. Kenny Shue, let's conclude this conversation. Do you think that in the end, universities will actually destroy themselves?
Wow, that's a good question. So I love what Tommy said about the credentials. of a university, right? These days, you get put into so much debt. What for? For a credential. And it's this credential that allows people to say, well, I got a degree from X university, therefore take me more seriously, therefore give me something. But the problem is the credential is being dislodged from the actual merit. To earn the credential, right? Now a degree from Harvard University is worth less than a degree from an actual realistic standpoint in terms of skills and knowledge gained than it used to be 50 years ago. So we're going to get to the point in culture, and I am sure of this, we are going to get to the point in culture where the credential of a university degree is so divorced from the reality of your educational experience that we are going to have a massive reckoning. I think the university is in a dangerous situation, especially the brick and mortar university. It needs to be reformed quickly. If it doesn't, I fear it will crumble.
Femi Nylander, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of privatization and kind of there's a lot of money in universities at the moment, and there's a lot of money to be made, and there's a lot of vice chancellors being paid hundreds of thousands of pounds, and a lot of students paying a lot of money for things that they shouldn't need. And what we really need is as people have said, to have people who want to do work with their hands and traditional careers, to do apprenticeships and stuff, and people who want to study to be able to go to university. But what we don't want is to have working class people and ethnic minorities and the rest being made to go and work with their hands, and anyone who has the money to go and do 5 degrees in art history because they can. And so universities should be accessible to those who want to become doctors and those who want to become want to do kind of white collar careers, and people from all walks of life should be able to access that. But that doesn't mean that everyone should feel the need to do a degree in order to feel like they've achieved something in life.
A fascinating conversation. Actor and commentator Femi Nylander and Kenny Xu, a podcast host and author of a brand new book all about universities. It's called Inconvenient Minority, the attack on Asian American excellence and the fight for meritocracy. There it is. It's out now. It's by Kenny Xu. Well, we're all about balance on this show. A statement from a Russell Group spokesperson said our universities have worked hard to prioritise students and provide the best possible experience during the pandemic, investing significantly in digital learning and increasing wider support services. Many thanks to them for that statement. Well, our text poll is a simple question. Is there any point going to university? 71% of you say no. There is no point going to university. 29% thinks it has merit. Fascinating results. Thanks for voting in that one. Next up in the news agenda with my amazing panel, has Vladimir Putin underestimated the Ukrainian people? We've also got my alternative take on the day's big stories. My alternative news headlines are at 10:03, straight after the 10 o'clock news. And after that, in Mark Meets, I'll be interviewing the legendary composer, producer and conductor, Jeff Wayne. What a rock legend he is. He's live in the studio, so get your questions in now. mark@gbnews.uk. Of course, one of his biggest hits was the War of the Worlds musical. Sold about 15 million copies around the world. Nice work. If you can get it, don't go anywhere. Lots to get through. Your emails next. And Vladimir Putin.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
So many emails coming in. Where do I start? Do you know what? I don't check the emails. And I love that because I trust you. It's like, I'm not going to censor you. So let's have a look what we've got here. Apart from, adult language, but none of you would indulge in that anyway. You're far too civilised. Let's have a look at this. How about H. Stokes, who says, Dear Mark, life has always been a greasy pole. Uni is supposed to give the leavers a starting point further up that pole. The sad bit is that it's still possible to slide back down. Oh, well said. I think I agree with you. I've been up and down that pole more often than Madonna, frankly.
Whoa.
And I've still got, I don't know, I've still got something resembling a career, at least here's hoping. How about uni from Linda? Dear Mark, key reason in relation to our obsession with universities is snobbery, which underpins far too much of British society. Lynn, thank you so much for that. How about this from Etienne, who says, Dear Mark, universities used to turn out a small number of future citizens with a very high level of education. It now turns out millions and millions of semi-educated wokies. Really? There you go. Listen, thank you for that. Oh, I quite like this one finally from Alan, who says, Dear Mark, binman, £36,000 a year per annum. What's the point of university? Well said, and certainly nothing wrong with being in the refuse collection business. We would be lost without those heroes. Well, with me reacting to the big stories of the day, Andre Walker, Alice Grant and Tommy Sandu. Attacks on Ukraine have continued for a third day, with Russian troops said to be within 19 miles of the capital city, according to UK defence officials. They're reported to be in full control of significant parts of Ukraine's territory. Around 200 people have been killed, tragically. More than 1,000 have been injured, and many have had their lives completely overturned. So they've had to stay under curfew, having to shelter in subway stations or try and flee to the safety of a foreign country. But one thing is emerging, the resolve of the Ukrainian people. People from all ages and careers and backgrounds are signing up to fight. We're hearing stories of people sacrificing themselves to hold off Russian troops for even longer. The Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, is also refusing to leave Kiev, turning down the offer of refuge to the US to instead stay and fight. So has Vladimir Putin underestimated the people of Ukraine? I suspect, Tommy Sandu, he has.
Yeah, he has. And not only that, I think he's underestimated the people of Russia. Because from what I hear, there's thousands of people taken to the streets, thousands of youngsters in particular kind of going, what do you think? And people in Russia are embarrassed. They're embarrassed by what he's done. So you're right when you say about has he lost it before it's even begun? He hasn't got the backing of his own people. And I think he picked a fight thinking it might be an easier fight, and it's clearly turned out to be a lot tougher, and the people are a lot more resilient than what he anticipated.
Well, that's right. In the end, this could be an example of people power if Putin is ultimately stopped by the people of Ukraine.
That would be interesting, but I think we have to remember Putin, who we're dealing with here, is an egomaniac, really. And what he's done, the way he's acted, is very, I think, typical of kind of egotistical, tyrannical autocrats. And I don't really think at the end of the day he's going to care about these Russian protests. We've already seen him crack down on his own people. I don't think that's going to change. I don't think he'll even care about what the Ukrainian people think, sadly. I mean, obviously what he's done is morally despicable, but if he had, a grain of self-reflection or taking into account the people's opinion or what's in their best interests, even for the Russian people, what's in their best interests, we wouldn't see this. So,
although I wonder whether at home, and I totally agree with you, I mean, his tanks will silence any protest. You're absolutely right. I mean, if it's good enough for Justin Trudeau, it's going to be good enough for Vladimir Putin. And I apologise to Vladimir Putin for placing him in the same context as Justin Trudeau. That was a low blow. Vladimir Putin is like Nelson Mandela compared to Justin Trudeau, as far as I'm concerned. Hand him the Nobel Peace Prize. But my point, and of course I jest, but look, Alice, you've got the people of Ukraine resisting. You've got protests on the streets of Russia. That's all political pressure on Putin. And what about the pressure from those oligarchs in London who are furious, who are spitting feathers about what Putin has done? Do you think they could leverage the situation?
Well, if Putin really genuinely cared about what would be in Russia's best economic interests, which something surprised me because I actually didn't think he would eventually invade. I had the suspicion because of Biden's incessant proclaiming it, but ultimately I thought he would have to be
Biden had it chalked up in the diary, didn't he?
That's the thing.
It was on his Google calendar.
Yeah, indeed. So very suspicious of that too. But essentially, I think that if this man actually cared about what would be in the national interest, he wouldn't have done this. But he doesn't care about the oligarchs, clearly. The sanctions are not going to do relatively much, as we've seen. In fact, they're pretty much theatre and pantomime. When I saw PMQ saying, Boris, oh, we've banned Aeroflot. I mean, that's a bit of a joke, to be honest.
Andre, I hear you've stopped drinking Russian vodka, which is obviously the ultimate sanction.
Wow.
Oh, my God, I haven't actually.
Don't tell me you've been enriching Putin by buying Smirnoff.
No, it was
Stolichnaya?
Russian standard. But I prefer that stuff from Lidl, the Putinov stuff. It's quadruple distilled.
Did you call it Putinov?
That's what it's called.
That's brilliant.
That's what it's called.
Is that a little private joke from Lidl, do you think?
Yeah, maybe. Do you know, funnily enough, I was talking to the doorman at GB...
By the way, you're going to get sent a crate of that now.
Yeah. I was talking to the doorman at GB News. I won't go into
by the way, is a legend.
A legend. But obviously, he's an ex-elite soldier, as all the security are at GB News.
Correct.
And he agreed with me that if we now had a no-fly zone over Russia, over Ukraine, the Russians would straight up lose, right? The reality is, what has happened is Putin has failed to gain air superiority. So the reason the Blitzkrieg failed, and this is the bit that hasn't been as widely reported in the West as it should have been, the Ukrainians javelin missiled the Russian parachute regiment. So hundreds of them have been killed, 3,500 Russians killed. Now what you've got to do, you've got to attempt to secure the supply lines 200 miles in very hostile territory with an armed citizenry. The problem is, and this is what I said at the top of the show, so for those of you who weren't around, I'll repeat it. The problem is the way that the Russian media elite has force-fed this narrative that everybody in Ukraine wants this Vladimir Putin invasion. But of course, the best thing is, the thing that makes me laugh most of all, well, maybe laugh's the wrong word, but I cannot understand how landing the parachute regiment demilitarises Ukraine. And I can't understand how you denazify Ukraine by sending the Chechen army in to kill the Jewish president.
It's a very silly...
Explain that one to me.
That doesn't... Look, of all the fake news we've heard from Vladimir... But I think the other thing that's interesting, you look at Zelensky compared to Putin. I mean, Putin was taken to the TV begging the Ukrainian army to change sides, right? Whereas Zelensky's just sat there, not on the helicopter, not running out. Now, how long he's going to live, and I say that as a serious point.
I know.
I don't know. But I have to say something, as it stands, the Russians have got a real problem. And now, this idea, because they've got no support from from ethnic Russians in Ukraine, this means it's just a Vietnam.
Well, this is really interesting you said that, because I looked at your Twitter feed earlier, which is well worth a read, by the way, at Andre J.P. Walker. And earlier today, you said, I predict Putin will be out of office in 1 month.
Yes.
Ukraine is going to win. This is a disaster for Russia. They're bogged down. They lost 450 special forces last night. They do not have air superiority, which you just mentioned. They've been beaten in Kiev and their economy is in meltdown. So, would you go that far? Literally, this could be, all but done in a month?
Yeah, it could be the end. It's almost certain. Well, it's definitely the end for Putin. The question is how long it's going to take.
Really? You're calling time on Putin already?
Without a doubt. He's destroyed the Russian economy. He's about to inflict the worst military defeat ever. Well, probably since the initial days of the Second World War. A group of plumbers in Ukraine are going to defeat the Russian army, which is unbelievable. Now they've spent all day getting them out of this SWIFT code. Did you see the ship? A shipload of cars have now been impounded in Bologna. It's a total disaster. And of course, we've now got the ultimate, which is this. Rather than have his assets stripped, Abramovich himself has toileted his pants and given Chelsea over to the trustees of the charity. That is to avoid...
He still technically owns the club.
That's to avoid the shares being taken off him, right? There are billions and billions of pounds in London that now are no longer going to be in the pockets of these oligarchs.
If it increases the chance of Tottenham getting top four, then...
Well, nothing does that.
Bring it on.
Nothing does that.
No, you'd have to get rid of all the other teams. Tommy, in the end, I don't know, we need Putin to fail? I mean, look, I've had emails on this programme last 24 hours, people saying, no, Putin actually has an argument for entering Ukraine, that it's always been a sort of weak spot in terms of Russian security. So, you know, there's two sides to every story, but how do you see this playing out?
No, you're right. You can absolutely see, look, there are always two sides to the story, and I think if there's one channel that should just explore where is Putin coming from, what does he want? Ultimately, we need a resolve. We need a resolve just to save human life. This is crazy. I think so many people, I listened to so much news today, and everyone's so surprised that this is going on. This style of attack is going on. In 2022, there needs to be a resolution. There's somehow, somewhere, people need to sit down. But I'm not sure about the sanctions. Again, I feel like the sanctions are it's a bit like the bully in the playground who's punching you in the face, but the teachers are going, I tell you what, we won't give him pudding at lunch. That should sort it. I'm like, no. You've got to get out there and break the fight up now.
I do think NATO will get involved. Ultimately, and Andrew, I'm not quite sure about Russia failing on this mission. I think that, honestly, Vladimir Putin does have a very strong military force, obviously, and he clearly doesn't care about the economic side effects. And plus, Russia themselves, at least they have gas supplies. Like, in Britain, we would really be in trouble. But the point is that Russia, economically and militarily and politically, are obviously much more stronger than Ukraine.
But you know, we can put all these caveats to one side. So the Blitzkrieg fails, but OK, the tanks are rolling in. But whichever way you look at it, Russia is still yet to achieve its day one objective, and we're on day 3.
But the objectives was just a pretext anyway. I don't think... I mean, does Putin really care about the denazification? Or is this more to do with the Minsk Treaty?
No, that's not what I mean.
Ukraine possibly joining NATO.
What I mean is they had intended to take the presidential palace day one. They'd intended to take the second city day one. They'd intended to maintain air superiority day one. They'd intended to create supply lines day one. They'd intended to land the parachute regiment day one. They've done none of that. None of it.
What I think will happen is that Ukraine will eventually cave into Putin's demands and make some sort of agreement as not to join the EU, not to join NATO,
I hope
remain a kind of neutral buffer zone.
Well, perhaps that's what we can hope for is a diplomatic solution. Well, look, we'll obviously continue that conversation, but it is Saturday night, and we spoke before the show. We want to have some fun as well, so we're going to do a Great British Game Show all about... what university degrees various celebrities actually studied for, which is going to be a bit of fun. I think it's called College Conundrum. Also, my Mark Meets guest is coming up. Really excited. He is, of course, Jeff Wayne, legendary composer. But after this, my alternative news headlines. Elton John, Noddy Holder, and Prince Harry, watch your back. See you in 3 minutes. Don't go anywhere.
GBNews is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Have a picture of him.
Very
like, all in
excited.
his
I've
army
just been
gear.
chatting with Jeff Wayne, the legendary composer of the War of the Worlds musical, which sold 15 million copies around the world. The guy is a legend. He's written a gazillion TV themes as well, adverts, you name it. A musical virtuoso, live in the studio for Mark Meets in a couple of minutes' time. Don't forget, we've also got Kinsey Schofield in America with US News. How is Joe Biden's handling of the Ukraine situation going down with Americans? We've got another great British game show, College Conundrums. What university degrees did various politicians and celebrities actually do, including me? Can you guess? It wasn't crayon making or jam production, I promise you. And straight after this, my satirical take on the day's big stories in my alternative news headlines. But first, the real proper headlines. Let's head over to the team. Of technical issues. I do want to get to your emails because there's been a flood of responses to our conversation about university. And I think this is, actually very, very compelling what you said, because many of you are arguing that young people have actually got to pay to actually be indoctrinated and not have free speech. And of course, the indignity of Zoom lectures rather than face-to-face, but with no discount. I really don't understand it. But yeah, for example, Stephanie has said, university is a complete waste of money. Get straight into the job ASAP. There you go. Lots more emails coming, but now here are the headlines.
Thank you. I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. A phone call has taken place between the Prime Minister and the Ukrainian President this evening, in which they agreed the international community needs to isolate Russia diplomatically and financially. In a statement, Number 10 said Boris Johnson also paid tribute to Volodymyr Zelensky and his people's incredible heroism. The leaders agreed that President Putin is being met with a greater resistance than he calculated and expressed mutual concern over the role Belarus has played as a conduit for the violence. Meanwhile, an advisor to the Ukrainian president claims 3,500 Russian soldiers have been killed or injured so far. Well, this evening, an air raid siren was heard in the capital as Russian forces targeted the city with artillery and cruise missiles. The mayor of Kiev, Vitaly Klitschko, has imposed a curfew and people have been warned to seek shelter. Earlier, President Zelensky welcomed moves by European countries towards cutting Russia off from SWIFT, the global banking system used to make payments.
Our diplomats fought around the clock and inspirationally for all European countries to agree on a strong and fair decision to disconnect Russia from the international interbanking network. We have also this important victory. This is billions and billions of losses for Russia, a tangible price for this vile invasion of our country.
Well, Boris Johnson says the UK will take refugees fleeing the war in Ukraine. It comes as the UN Refugee Agency said that more than 120,000 Ukrainians have left the country since the invasion began. Drone footage shows an 18-mile-long queue of vehicles on Ukraine's border crossing as thousands try to enter Poland. The aid agency is also warning that fuel, cash and medical supplies are running low in parts of the country, which could drive up to 5 million people to flee abroad. Mark Kovalenko is with thousands of other Ukrainians waiting to cross the border.
I want to survive because I have a family in Europe. So right now in Ukraine is a dangerous place because Russian forces come from more, and every day is strange time. USA and NATO don't help us, so we don't have any chosen. We must do this something for survival.
The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has called for the Russian ambassador to the UK to be expelled. It follows an announcement that the UK would impose personal sanctions on President Vladimir Putin and his foreign minister Sergei Lavrov. The US, Canada and the European Union are also doing the same. And Chelsea Football Club's Russian owner, Roman Abramovich, says he's giving up stewardship of the Premier League side. Mr Abramovich, who bought the London club in 2003, says the trustees of its charitable foundation are in the best position to look after its interests. He will remain as Chelsea's owner, but will not be involved in any decision-making. Well, on TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Thanks, Miranda. It's time now for my alternative news headlines and a difficult 24 hours for Vladimir Putin. As Russian troops abandon their positions, the economy at home takes a battering from sanctions. And now, in what may be a decisive setback, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have written a strongly worded letter on their website condemning his actions. The normally strong-willed Putin is said to be devastated. He's barely left his room, say insiders. The man is broken. He's been through a lot in his life. But you don't come back from being condemned by a party-loving royal and his Hollywood actress wife. You don't, do you? You just don't come back from that. Music news now, and legendary group Slade have sparked rumours of a reunion after singer Noddy Holder and guitarist Dave Hill were spotted side by side enjoying a lunch together. In fact, we can exclusively confirm that a tour is on the cards, with this programme receiving a leaked copy of their tour rider, which includes Last of the Summer Wine on DVD, comfortable shoes, and a family pack of Rennies. Staying on music now, and Sir Elton John cheated disaster this week when his private jet took over an hour to land after hydraulic failure. The plane was thrown all over the place, but the rock superstar's hair didn't move an inch. In tribute to this much-loved musical genius, here on Mark Dolan Tonight, we've compiled a list of airplane-themed songs for this legendary hitmaker, starting with He's Still Landing, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. Runway seems to be the hardest word. Someone Saved My Flight Tonight. Goodbye Yellow Brick Runway. Can you feel the loss of air cabin pressure tonight? Saturday Night's All Right for Flying. And last but not least, Don't Go Breaking My Plane. You've got to love Elton. And finally, royal news. And William and Kate are thought to be planning to send Prince George to the elite private school Eton. Now, this has got me very worried. I really hope this young prince, who is third in line to the throne and whose gran is a billionaire, won't lose touch with reality. And those are your alternative news headlines. Lots of emails to catch up on. How about this? My big opinion was about cancel culture within friendship groups now. People are actually getting rid of friends and family members for having the wrong opinions. Well, Leslie says, good evening. What a great comment at the top of the show in your big opinion, Mark. I'm truly sorry to hear of Lucy's experience. That's Dan Wotton's producer, who's been cancelled by friends for having a view about lockdowns. Extraordinary stuff. If you want to see that particular big opinion monologue, it's now on our Twitter feed at GBNews. Sadly, this is becoming all too prevalent, says Leslie. It's an era where true friendship has been confused with Facebook friendship. Lucy, says Leslie, it's worth remembering that. Those who scream about inclusivity but exclude others are fools and hypocrites. Those who decry discrimination but discriminate against others are fools and hypocrites. Those who demand tolerance but are intolerant are fools and hypocrites. Those who cannot bear to hear divergent opinions are fools and hypocrites. What a brilliant email. Well, it goes on, Les, but I've got to say that was poetry in motion. Thank you so much for that. Lots more emails to get through, including Vladimir Putin and what's the point in going to university. But now let's speak to a musical genius, shall we? It's time for Mark Meets, in which I catch up with the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, professional sport and beyond, as well as those who simply have a big story to tell. Well, tonight, legendary musician, composer and lyricist Jeff Wayne. In 1978, Jeff released Jeff Wayne's musical version of The War of the Worlds, his musical adaptation of the iconic H.G. Wells story. Well, it's an album that changed the world. It was an international smash hit. This 2-disc composition sold upwards of 15 million copies around the world. It was the 40th best-selling album of all time in the UK by the year 2009. It included, of course, the worldwide hit singles The Eve of the War and Forever Autumn. But this is a man who's done so much in music. He's written more pop songs and other classic tunes than you can shake a stick at, even lending his talents to the world of TV theme tunes, including Good Morning Britain on TV-AM, and the music in countless adverts, including Fry's Turkish Delight. Do you remember that? Amazing stuff. Now, The War of the Worlds musical became a popular computer game, and after its re-release as a record in 2005, it spent 10 consecutive weeks in the UK top 40. Well, the popularity of this music continues, and now Jeff Wayne's musical version of The War of the Worlds is a massive live show. It's not a show, it's an event. With one reviewer saying, "All I can say is wow, it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen, 5 stars." And I'm delighted to say that Jeff Wayne joins me in the studio now. Hi, Jeff.
Hello, Mark.
Who taught you music?
It started with my dad when I was about 5 because he was a singer, a writer, and a performer. And I grew up around him and musicians and creative people. And we had a piano in our apartment in Forest Hills, New York, where I first grew up. And I just loved sort of fighting him over this chair that would sit at the piano, and one of us had to play. And I fell in love with music really at that age. But I did take classical lessons formally for about 16 years from California, from New York. And then I moved to England with my parents, and I carried on my classical piano there. We moved to New York, back to New York, and I then switched to jazz with a brilliant teacher named John Mahegan, who happened to teach at Juilliard. And he taught me privately, and it was a real opposite to classical music, the freedom of improvisation, and all that is the opposite in structure to classical music. So it grounded me in those two areas, and I just then moved on into other areas of music, from pop to electronic. By the time years later I came to compose and produce The War of the Worlds, it was a real sort of mixture of everything that had touched me in music. And I think the way it sounds is a good reflection of that.
Well, we were talking about Elton John earlier, who attended the Royal Academy of Music, had classical training. How important a foundation was that classical training for you?
Very much so, because I'm a very good sight reader, both as a musician but as a conductor. So the classical training comes from that. Elton John is a brilliant musician. You know, in fact, a small story here is when I was living in London, it was before I was married, and I was breaking through, writing music for all the various types of things you mentioned. And I was writing music for a film production company that would commission me from time to time. And they did a documentary about Elton John as he was breaking through. And I was living conveniently in London, northwest London, and I had on the top of this house, this sort of combination of Muse House and a house that connected to it, a really nice music room and a baby grand piano. And they knew the room because they'd been to hear me play, sort of ideas for things that they were asking me to consider writing. And they asked if they could film him in my music room. I thought, please, I get to meet Elton John. And I did. It was very brief. And I was downstairs and he was playing away on whatever tunes he was playing, being filmed. He left. We said our goodbyes. That was really just hello and goodbye. And then later, I was writing something that had a deadline. I came up to my piano, and there were a couple of notes that were broken because he was, from his rock and roll point of view, playing so hard.
Elton John broke your piano.
I never sent him a bill, though.
That's a chapter heading for the life story, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's better than Freddie Starr ate my hamster. Elton John broke my Steinway. And of course, you went on to collaborate with his brilliant lyricist, Gary Osborne.
Indeed. And I saw him chat to you just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that's a very good relationship, a working relationship that you guys have had. You've had a lot of success. Why does it work? Why does his lyrics facilitate your music so well?
Aside from being a brilliant interpreter of ideas in lyrical form, the way we always worked was that he'd need a tune first. Whereas I think it was the opposite with him and Sir Elton.
Yeah.
But for me, I would have an idea of what I was trying to express, whether it was a pop song or later on with the War of the Worlds. And he understood the storyline, and his lyrics just flowed from that. So it's been a very long relationship. It didn't start as a writing partnership. It started where he and another singer, Paul Vigrass, started doing vocals for me on all my sessions, commercials, TV shows, whatever it happened to be. And that's how I got to meet them, and it evolved into what became a writing partnership.
And when did you conceive the ingenious idea of putting music to this amazing, rather dystopian story of War of the Worlds?
Well, it was my dad, actually. He kept reminding me that I was having a great run as a composer, a producer. In commissioned work, I was producing a couple of artists, including David Essex, who we had a long run of hit singles and albums, and I was his musical director. So I'd go out on the road, conduct, play keyboards, put the bands together. And it built up to enough years where my dad finally said to me, look, it's great, you're having fun, your career is doing really well.
Making a few quid?
A few bob along the way. I don't know about quid, but it was certainly a few bob. But he said, you always told me telling my dad, that I wanted to find a story that I feel very passionate about, and that having been used to taking commissions where you're interpreting, whether it's a film, a TV show, or working with a producer where your role is to bring out the best way for that artist to sound and to perform, this was something that I wanted to do as sort of like a blank page. And I agreed with him. I said it was time to really start looking. And I started reading all different books. My dad did. And eventually, it was in fact the night before going out on a tour with David, he came over to my house. No internet in those days. We're talking about the early 70s. And he handed me this book and said, here's another one to read. And it was H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds. And
David Essex gave you this book, or your father?
No, it was my dad.
Your father gave you that book. Amazing.
Yeah, and David remembers me mentioning this book to him to this day. And I had read a whole bunch of other books, some very literate, but very long and complicated in terms of the wordiness of them. But the H.G. Wells story, aside from being a brilliant vision and a lot to say in a short space of time, was not a long book. And it just grabbed me. On one read, I was starting to hear sound, not tunes or formal things, but I could hear emotions and the idea of something that I really said, this is the one. If I could make a musical work out of H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, I'm ready to go after all these other books that we had read. But it was in copyright still at that point. And because it was, as I'm saying, no internet, no Googling, how do you find who inherited the rights from H.G. Wells, who passed away in 1946. And about 3 months later, it took, which is the length of time it took us, to find a set of agents, or actually a brother and sister, who represented Frank Wells, the son of H.G. Wells. He had inherited all the rights from H.G. And we presented ourselves, and it was a father and son partnership, which Frank liked.
Did you go to visit Frank Wells then?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it was at the agents representing Frank.
Right.
So it was in their offices.
That's a big moment. That's a big conversation to have.
Absolutely. I can remember it so clearly to this day. That's a long time ago now. But the other part of it was the fact that I had been the first person that had ever come along, in spite of movies that may have been good or not so good, a classic radio production by Orson Welles, no family connection there, who did a radio production.
Yes, a famous radio
absolutely, 1938, Mercury Theatre, but always set in contemporary.
Some people thought it was real when they heard it, didn't they?
That's right. I mean, Yanks, what can I say?
Yeah, no, there's no hope for them. Let's remind our audience that you are a naturalised Brit, by the way.
I am. I've now lived here over 2/3 of my life.
You're one of us. We're not giving you back.
Well,
you
I'm more Brit than Yank, so
glad to hear that.
Thank you.
You got the right ratio. So you had that encounter, and you achieved permission.
Well, the two factors was a father and son team who were partners, and the fact that when I presented my idea for interpreting his dad's work, I was the first one that had come along that wanted to keep it true to what was in fact a very dark Victorian tale, keep the main characters and the main themes as he wrote it. And that really was one of the two convincing factors. And then, because it was still in copyright, we had to, and we did, fortunately, secure the rights from Frank. And then after he passed away, it went to other members of the family. The royalties and income that came in until only a few years ago, it went out of copyright.
And it became a global international smash. I can't imagine you anticipated that level of success. You were, of course, a very, very prolific and successful, music arranger, as you said, essentially musical director for David Essex, and you'd made a gazillion TV theme tunes, adverts. I think at one point I was reading, I think you'd composed something like 7,000 tunes. Could that be right?
No, that's
apocryphal?
It's a lovely exaggeration, Mark, but the truth is it was about just over 3,000.
Okay.
But as a production company, with other very talented musicians signed to our company, we actually passed about 9,000 several years ago.
That is amazing.
But 3,000 or more.
3,000 just from your own creativity is incredible. So you were successful, but then this thing went bonkers. Did it change your life?
Yes, it did. I mean, because it gave me, in fact, from being a backroom boy as a producer, a writer, it's no insult because you just weren't in the foreground.
You were Sir George Martin, weren't you?
Well,
or Bacharach David. You were the genius behind the microphone.
Well, thanks for even putting my name in those sort of company. But yeah, I mean, being a producer and all the things that come from it, writing, arranging, conducting, you're not usually known because it's the artist or it's the project, and rightfully so. The War of the Worlds changed that and has remained like that for me since then, but I've spent a lot of time with The Martians since it came out because I didn't expect the life that it's had in its various forms, not just as an album being re-recorded, but all the directions it's gone in, and it's been a thrill.
Well, let's talk about the live show. I mean, this is fantastic. We've been waiting for it because of the pandemic and lockdowns. So huge appetite is out there now. I mentioned when it was re-released in the mid-noughties, it went straight back into the top 10. So it stood the test of time. It's an evergreen. It's a classic album. And now it's a live show, but more than a show. So tell me about it.
We started touring the arenas in 2006. And every year or two, we'd come back again. And the truth is, we didn't know whether there would be a second tour or not. We had never performed it. But it was really well accepted. It's a very large-scale, multimedia interpretation of my original double albums. I'm conducting on stage a live band and a symphonic string orchestra, and then characters that play the roles that were heard on the original double album are live on stage. we use all sorts of technologies. More recently, as the tours have progressed, we've added all sorts of sort of technological ingredients, and the technology, as in all forms of...
Yeah, I think they're calling it 5D or something. You've had 3D and 4D and 5D, a truly immersive experience. Pyrotechnics, digital, virtual reality, the whole shebang.
It's got quite a lot of technological ingredients. The last one that we added, which is even a bit more in this coming tour, is a bridge, which used to be in a song called Brave New World. It's actually a major piece sung by our artilleryman, and he's got a vision for mankind's survival, which is to take those who have survived underground and to rebuild, and when they're ready to come back and take Earth away from the Martians who are above ground, that's the time to come back. All the tours up until our 2018 touring has been a bridge on stage, and he would perform on it and march on it and do all sorts of things. Now we have a bridge that is gigantic. It comes down, the audience aren't expecting it, and it clips onto like the edge of the stage, and it goes out, opens up, and goes over the audience virtually to the back of whatever venue we're playing. It's very impressive. It brings the audience more into the show, which is what I've always wanted to do. I've always felt it's a living work, and that the more that the audience gets engaged, and arenas are generally big, even the smallest ones are twice the size of the biggest West End theaters. So when you put it into that scale, up to the biggest arenas, like the O2 or the biggest is in Manchester, it brings our audiences into the involvement. The music is, as I composed it, I've added a few things over the years. And for me as a conductor, conducting my own work, it doesn't get better than that.
Well, what's amazing is that you're there live conducting it every night, and that you've waited decades for this great musical vision to become a theatrical vision, a live show, and the tickets are flying off the shelves. So let me tell our audience how to get hold of tickets to Jeff Wayne's musical version of The War of the Worlds. Simply go to thewaroftheworlds.com, thewaroftheworlds.com, and the way that you get the tickets, then it goes through Live Nation. So worth a punt, I would suggest. I'll certainly be going with my family, and I can't wait. Jeff Wayne, what a treat to meet you, and thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure, Mark.
I've met Gary Osborne, I've met Jeff Wayne, and therefore another box tick.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Definitely. Brilliant stuff. Fascinating interview. I think you'll agree. Lots more to come. Our news agenda. Should shops continue to blame COVID for bad service? We've also got another great British game show. And next, the Queen of US News. It's the brilliant Kinsey Schofield live on how the Americans are judging Joe Biden's performance in relation to Ukraine. So lots to get through, some great topics, a few laughs as well. I'll see you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Fascinating conversation with Jeff Wayne. The biggest stars speak to GB News and Mark Dolan tonight. It's time now for US News, in the company, speaking of stars, of the Queen of US showbiz royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. And Kinsey, let's start with Joe Biden. How is his handling of the Ukraine crisis going down in the States?
Great question. NPR and PBS, they just did a new survey, and over 50% of the Americans surveyed said that they would consider Joe Biden's first year as president a huge failure. So I think that Americans are disappointed in the handling of this. We want leadership. We want to feel like the strongest country in the world, which we used to be able to say we were. Weakness, it arouses evil, and that's exactly what's happened in this scenario. I would strongly say, confidently say, that Americans are really disappointed in this situation, and we're scared.
Well, for sure. And this, of course, follows the botched departure of Allied forces from Afghanistan. It sets a worrying theme, doesn't it? A theme of surrender and weakness, Kinsey.
Absolutely. And, you know, the world knows that when America is strong, we'll use our strength to protect what is important to us. And it's not just, Afghanistan. It's every decision, it feels like, that Joe Biden's made over the last year has weakened our military. And one of the first things that President Trump did when he got to the White House was strengthen our military. And people are watching. Putin is watching. He knew exactly what he was doing and when to do it. I have yet to find one single individual that has said that this would have happened under Trump's watch.
Well, Kinsey, moving on, the time has finally come. Actress Gal Gadot has been dethroned as the celebrity with the most embarrassing public response to a tragic global crisis. Remember when she teamed up with other stars for this rather tone-deaf rendition of Imagine as they isolated in their million-dollar properties?
You know, this virus had affected the entire world, everyone. Doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try.
No hell below us.
Did you see the size of that garden? Well, actress Anna Lynn McCord has decided to wade in on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. She took, didn't she, Kinsey, to social media to issue a direct plea to Vladimir Putin in the form of an original poem about his mother. Take a listen.
Dear President Vladimir Putin, I'm so sorry that I was not your mother. If I was your mother, you would have been so loved, held in the arms of joyous light. Never would the stories plight the world unfurled before our eyes, a pure demise of nations sitting peaceful under a night sky. If I was your mother, the world would have been warm.
Amazing.
Oh my God. What are you thinking? I cannot imagine the process, the A to B, the B to C of writing that poem and thinking, I'm going to share this with the world today. I cannot even remotely comprehend. It is so bizarre to me. But, I do have to mention BT Dubs. Please don't be mad at me, but I have to throw this out there. Anna Lynn McCord became famous because she was on the reboot of the Beverly Hills 90210 show, along with our friend Meghan Markle, who was in the opening scene giving fellatio in the parking lot of the high school. There's your Duchess.
Who's Bill Aitio?
Bill Aitio? I don't know.
Oh, OK. You have me worried there. I've never heard of fellatio before, but I'll look it up after the show. Fellatio? Fellatio?
Fellatio.
Listen, I've had a very sheltered upbringing.
I'm sorry,
Kinsey.
I shouldn't have said it. Now I feel bad.
Kinsey, I'm not a man of the world, you know. I've got a lot to learn. One thing in mitigation for Annalyn McCord, she's got great hair, and I'm loving the sleeveless knitwear.
Yeah, absolutely. No, when I was watching that, I thought, God, she looks gorgeous. It's a shame that she didn't utilize this, you know, for something better. But it's cringe. I know where her heart is. God bless her soul. But it was just so unnecessary. When things like this are going down, if you can't contribute some, you know, I do have a list of people that are actually contributing something positive. Ryan Reynolds, he's saying that him and his wife will double up to $1 million donations to a refugee charity. That's on his Instagram and his Twitter right now. If you really want to see celebrities that are doing something positive, Sam Heughan tweeted, he's from Outlander, he tweeted how disappointed he was in this in our leadership. And he tweeted to Joe Biden, which I loved, and Boris Johnson. And then, you know, The Simpsons, the creators of The Simpsons, the cartoon, they posted a picture in support of Ukraine. So there are some people that are making the right moves in supporting Ukraine and voicing their support. But there are other people that are, it's just like, please sit down. Please don't, you know, contribute.
Please sit down. It's got to be a catchphrase for this strand of the show, hasn't it, Kinsey? For example, Harry and Meghan, I mentioned them earlier in my alternative news headlines. They've been rather mocked for releasing a statement saying they stand with the people of Ukraine. Why can't celebs just stay out of it?
And you know, I'm disappointing you right now because I have to defend Prince Harry for 2 seconds. You know, he's seen war. He's seen what it can do to a country. He's seen what it can do to their people. He's seen what it does to soldiers, you know, PTSD and all of the stuff, that the terrible things that come with war. However, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle also went on Time 100's ABC News special and told everybody to vote for Joe Biden. They endorsed Joe Biden. And this is a literally, I feel like you can look at this and say this is a direct result of Joe Biden being president. Because like I said, no one says that this would have happened under Trump's watch. But no, I agree. I don't think it's necessary for everybody to come out and say what side they're on unless they have a way to make things better, which, you know, Ryan Reynolds is saying, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. We need more celebrities like that.
Too right. Whilst you've been talking, by the way, not that I'm not hanging on your every word, but I've just Googled fellatio and it takes me... Luckily, the sound is down.
I feel so bad. Should I have not said it?
I'm not sure if he's upside down, but listen, it takes me back to GCSE biology. Speaking of which, let's talk about plastic surgery because Linda Evangelista says she's not hiding anymore after a botched cosmetic fat freezing procedure left her brutally disfigured. Now, she is one of the most beautiful women in the world, or you know, certainly she was a very bankable model, wasn't she? What went wrong, Kinsey?
Well, this was an accident with her cosmetic surgery. I don't know. I haven't, you know, it was a dangerous procedure she was doing. It had like the opposite effect of what it was supposed to do. And it doesn't affect very many people, but unfortunately it did affect her. And I look at her and I still think she's a beautiful woman. Yeah. I understand that she, you know, has monetized her looks and she's going to be much more sensitive to this issue than just a fan of hers. But looking at all the pictures that are being released of her, I look at her and I think, my God, she is still a beautiful woman. And I'm sorry that she's so devastated over this because I still see her as, you know, just an aging superstar, an aging model. So, yeah, I feel terrible for her in this scenario, but I'm glad she got in front of it because had she been photographed, the headlines, I think, would have been much crueler towards her.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's bring my panel in on this if I can, Kinsey. Delighted to have Alice with us and also Andre Walker and Tommy Sandu, none of whom need any work, Kinsey. I think you'll agree. I mean, Tommy, what do you think about this? Do you think these stars are foolish for trying to delay the aging process?
Well, look, This is all natural, as you can tell. I sometimes think about it, oh, should I get the hair done? Should I get the hair transplant? I think, you know what? As soon as you start meddling with it, I think it sends out other kind of signals. It says more about yourself. If you want to change yourself, I think a true happiness lies within and all that. I know it's a bit cheesy, but I do believe that. She is beautiful. She was beautiful. And I've got to say, I've even seen the pictures now at 56. I'm like, she looks good for 56. She still looks like a good woman. But what I do understand from this whole process that she went through, it's like a fat freezing thing, and it's supposed to then get rid of the fat, and in 1% of the people it has the opposite effect, and it actually makes the fat harden and swell up. So there is some serious, actually, people are going, oh, what's her problem? What's her problem? She needs to lighten up. Actually, it's like having rock hard lumps, and there's some serious, I know it sounds disgusting, there's some like chafing that goes with it that causes serious discomfort. So she's going through a lot of pain with it, but she's in 1% of the minority of people that have this reaction to this treatment. But I still want to say, hey, Linda, you still look great. So, I hope that the pain dies down for her and things like that. But she looks good. She looks like any 56-year-old woman would look. She looks better than most.
Alice, would you ever consider a procedure?
No, I think this serves as a warning to all ladies out there. Don't do it, because if this can happen to a supermodel, it could happen quite easily to just an ordinary woman. Doesn't matter how rich or famous you are, you can still get a botched surgery. So personally, I would not ever.
How about you, Andre? Would you like to be stuffed with filler anytime?
I'm not answering that. Like, just ask me a different question. I'm not answering it. I will say one thing, something that I always say to people. Medical question. I always say to people, the third set of teeth are the most expensive. You get the first 2 sets for free. So I learned that the hard way. But look, as far as fat freezing goes, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm doing okay with my reduced beer intake. But I have to say, what worries me is. If this is your business looking perfect on camera, then that's fine. You've got an awful lot of money to spend on it. I worry about people with all these cosmetic surgeries and whatever, and these people that get all their teeth scraped down and then rebuilt, and it's sort of £100,000 commitment for the rest of your life. And you think, I'm just not convinced we should be letting younger people do it. But then again, I don't like tattoos either. That's why I haven't got any.
Well, look, at Kinsey, Hollywood will never give up its addiction to plastic surgery, will it?
No, and neither will I. I love my Botox. My lips have worn off, but I like to get my lips done when I can. And if I could afford to have the fat sucked out of my body, you bet your butt I would, okay?
You don't have an ounce of fat on you. One of the main reasons we love having you on the show is because you're so gorgeous, as well as being a great broadcaster. Kinsey, let's finish up with a few celebrities who may or may not have had plastic surgery. And I'd like you in the panel to give your verdict. So we've got a very famous businessman in this country. He's a member of the House of Lords. He's called Lord Sugar. And Lord Sugar presents The Apprentice in the UK. And he had the bags under his eyes tidied up. Do you think that was worth the money? Does that look like a good after photo to you?
No. Oh, I thought that was the before. I'm sorry.
Oh dear, Lord Sugar will be very offended. How about Sharon Osbourne, who has been very open about her procedures, her facelifts, a tummy tuck, eye lift and liposuction. Is that a yes or a no for you, Kinsey?
I love it. I think she looks great.
Yeah. Alice?
Slightly inhuman. Let's be real.
If you keep pulling her face like that, she's going to have boobs on her chin.
I think the natural look suits everyone better.
I love those people where you can't work out whether they've had Botox or a stroke.
How about Kylie Jenner? Someone who has made money from plastic surgery. Who knew a bit of lip filler could make you millions?
Wow.
Yeah, and she lied about it forever. She said she just overlined her lips, which was the worst part. But yeah, if she had not had all the work she'd had done to her face, there's no way she would be one of the richest women. I mean, she's probably the richest woman her age in this country.
And last but not least, Brazilian TV personality Jessica Alves, who's known for having numerous surgeries to alter her appearance.
Whoa!
No stranger to plastic surgery, because she rose to fame a few years ago as a guy before she transitioned. Originally, she wanted to look like a Ken doll. Now she's Barbie.
She looks like that thing from Roswell. Oh!
It's the scariest thing I've ever seen.
I had no idea that was the same person. I knew of that person. I did. Oh, my gosh.
That's right. It's
I'll tell you what,
permanent transformation, a metamorphosis.
It should surely make Linda Evangelista feel better. Like, those are successful jobs. Linda's got to be going, actually, I'll take a botch job all day long now. Thank you very much. God, if it means looking like that.
But Kinsey's face is frozen, and I don't think it's the Botox.
No, it wasn't the Botox.
Kinsey, there isn't a single thing we'd change about you, and we can't wait to see you in a week's time. The queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, live from Hollywood, California. Go to her brilliant website, which is To Die For Daily, which is a brilliant, dedicated royal website, a treasure trove of information for fans of the monarchy around the world. Brilliant stuff. Well, I'll try and keep a straight face through our next part of the show. We've saved our best till last. We've got another great British game show tonight, College Conundrums. Which degrees did famous people study at university? You're going to have to guess at home, plus my panel. And next in the news agenda, we wanted to do this last night, but why are shops still blaming bad service on COVID? We'll find out after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A very nice email from Caroline. Is university worth it? And Caroline said, hi, Mark, further to my previous email below, because I did get an email earlier from Caroline. Thanks for that, Caroline. In my case, it was definitely worth going to uni because having knowledge of the law helped when my late brother's estate was taken to court in an attempt to change his will under the Inheritance Act. It saved the estate thousands, and vulture solicitors never made a profit for it. I'm so glad, Caroline, that issue resolved so well. On the War of the Worlds, I spoke to the composer Jeff Wayne earlier, and I've got Dawn who says, Dear Mark, I think I've got the original vinyl somewhere. Like yourself, I grew up in the Cold War era, so it's kind of translated to that for me. Great show as always. Well, Dawn, thank you so much. Brilliant to have you on board. Let's crack on with the news agenda. And Caroline, you're going to need to roll this for me because I've left my clicker next door. Essentially, everyone is blaming COVID now for bad service. This is a huge headache for customers, whether it's call centres or in shops. When you get bad service, it's because of COVID. So is it time for us to call time on companies that use COVID as an excuse for, frankly, crap service? What do you think about this, Alice?
Well, I mean, it's happening with universities and it is happening with business on a wider scale. I think, obviously, the universities, at least, they made like millions in profit from the pandemic, putting everything on Zoom, low operation costs, and yet we're charging students the same tuition fee. So, of course, I see that on the wider business scale as well. And to be honest, I personally support businesses that have removed most, if not all, COVID restrictions. So I would continue to support local businesses.
So you voted with your wallet, actually?
Yes, yeah, I think that's the most important thing we can do. Businesses that don't discriminate against the unvaccinated, businesses that don't enforce mask wearing, local businesses, extremely important to support. So that's what I would.
Yeah, well, I think that's the way to go. Tommy, have you experienced crap COVID service?
2.5 hours. 2.5 hours, about three or four occasions, so totaling about 10 hours on hold to British Airways, just to consolidate my air miles, because we accidentally set up 2 air miles accounts, don't ask, and just had to kind of get them all into one place. These are real problems,
Sounds
man.
dodgy.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. One was my British side, one was my Indian side. No, it was that. But what would happen was at the end of it, it would go doot 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 and just cut out. And I mean, it is soul destroying. But more importantly than that, I think the Domino's mozzarella dough balls, they stopped doing those because they blamed it on COVID. That they stopped doing a certain dough ball because of COVID. That feels. Come on, you can always rustle up a dough ball.
I mean, listen, I know this is 1,000,000% first world problems, but I went to like it's basically just a kind of working men's sort of membership club, right?
Soho House.
I don't know.
I know how you roll,
the
Mark.
posh one. But basically, and I've done some gigs there in the past, and they got a really nice pool table. So I took my son. I was like, I'll have a beer and we'll have a game of pool. And he went, no, the pool table's closed because of COVID. Right? This is like a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
How many lives have been saved by making
the
pool table out of bounds? Unless you take someone's eye out with like the red.
Yeah. I've got to be honest with you though. I mean, we're meant to be a serious news channel, all right? We're having a bit of a laugh, but
that ship has passed, my friend.
Tommy's example. Oh, COVID was terrible for me. Integrating my 2 air miles account was an absolute nightmare. You think?
Balls.
I'm not being. Oh, the dough balls as well.
No, but the funny thing is that I've not had so many emails since a couple of months ago when we talked about this issue about bad service because of COVID, in verticals because of COVID, and my computer melted because I got so many people were so angry about how bad things have got.
But I found there was a couple of pubs where I live. Right, where you knew that the landlords loved it. And there was one guy who'd gone into the newspaper saying, I'm exceeding every requirement. I mean, I don't know what he actually sounds like, but I imagine it sounds like But then, of course, he's on the TV, on the local paper going, it's been very difficult for me, we've lost a foot. That's because you've told all your customers not to come.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's terrible. Although I did see a sign with somebody saying, most of our staff haven't turned up due to COVID. Please don't have a go at the ones that did bother coming in.
That's a nice line.
I thought that was a reasonable.
The other thing I would say is, look, I feel for call centre staff because that's not an easy job. It's very high pressure, it's long hours, and I generally try to be ultra courteous to anyone I speak to. I find out what they're called, I thank them at the end. But I've noticed, and it's only anecdotal, that a lot of people at call centres are clearly at home and they just sound depressed and lonely. I feel that the grumpiness level has gone up. Have you not noticed that on call centres? Because they're isolated, haven't got the work banter.
I think the reason that Tommy's problem came about is I think they're just transferring it to your mobile, aren't they? And so if you don't answer your mobile, it can't transfer back to the system, which is why it kind of hangs up.
But have you not noticed
Thinking about that, my mother had to wait, I think, 3 hours on the phone to the NHS the other day. And I think someone had taken a lunch break, probably at home. Just relaxed.
Well, that's a really important, serious point.
3 hours, she was going absolutely stir crazy.
Yeah.
I felt for her.
Because of COVID,
She ended up hanging up without...
Is that right?
Yeah, it was just...
Despite Brexit.
It was crazy.
Absolutely, exactly. Because of Brexit, because of COVID. Sorry, big corporations, give it a break. It's time for better customer service. I speak on behalf of my many viewers, and I know that you'll share that sentiment. It's time now for this. I've got my clicker. Thanks, Sasha. It's time now to play the Great British Game Show. Earlier in the programme, in our big question, we were looking at whether there's any point in going to university with actor and commentator Femi Nylander and podcast host and author Kenny Xu. Well, perhaps going to university is not so bad after all, because in tonight's Great British Game Show, we'll be guessing what 8 public figures studied at university in a game called College Conundrum. That's right, College Conundrum. What did the famous celebrity study at uni? And let's start with this rather famous politician. Margaret Thatcher.
Chemistry.
I beat you to it.
Chemistry is right. And Andre, am I right in thinking that some people argue that her expertise in science and chemistry made her a very logical and balanced politician?
Oh, I thought you were going to say made her help invent Mr. Whippy ice cream.
Well, no, tell me about that.
She did not invent Mr. Whippy ice cream. However, some of the chemicals that she worked on at university enabled you to produce an ice cream that didn't have ice in it, if you like. It didn't have ice crystals.
Fluffy, right.
Yeah, so she contributed. By the way,
amazing.
Alice is very pleased because she goes to Oxford and she's just discovered that she'll get a master's degree for 80 quid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, that's fantastic news.
I'd say a little face lit up.
Not only does she owe you a drink, she owes you an invitation to the graduation.
I totally agree with that.
But just stay away from those young women, please. You know, they're just starting their journey in life, Andre.
They need to be educated.
No, they don't.
They need to learn the way of the world.
They're at Oxford, Andre, they're fine.
They need to learn. Come here, my dear.
Things have unravelled somewhat. So let's move on to our next celebrity. And who have we got now? This is Harry Hill, a brilliant comedian.
It's got to be biology because he's a doctor. He's a GP, isn't he?
Well done. Medicine.
Well done.
Studied medicine. That's exactly right. OK, our next celebrity, St George's Hospital Medical School, no less.
University of London.
Very good detail there from Miss Garner. Thank you for that. OK, next up, J.K. Rowling. Before she got cancelled, what did she study at uni?
English literature.
No, French and classics.
Oh,
who knew?
Mind you, there's a lot of classics in Harry Potter, isn't there?
Exactly right. Too right. Many classical illusions. How about Prince William?
Oh.
Did he go to university?
Fine art. I think he studied fine art.
Really?
Maybe history of art?
Geography.
Bingo. I'm afraid that
Alice
did get it. has stolen the points.
As I got the first one.
No, not geology. You thought maybe it was going to be one in land management.
Right.
That's what the Toffs always do.
That's right, something like that. No.
OK, next up, our next celebrity is Anne Widdecombe, who, by the way, is starring on tomorrow night's show.
Oh, I've got this.
Anne Widdecombe, hold fire. Anne Widdecombe is my guest on Mark Meets at 10 o'clock tomorrow night. We're going to talk about Boris. We're going to talk about COVID. We're going to talk about Putin. Anne Widdecombe, live on the show, Mark Meets tomorrow night. You will not want to miss it. But what did she
studied the old version of PPE, politics, philosophy and economics.
She did, but for a bonus point, what did she do at Birmingham before that?
Maybe theology, philosophy.
Good guess, something ancient. A dead language.
Latin.
So PPE, but before that, Latin at Birmingham. Brian May, let's power through these. Brian May.
He's a chemist. Biologist, chemist.
Mathematics. But by God, what a musical genius he is. How about Lisa Kudrow from Friends?
Don't know who she is.
Now, she's, by the way, turns out she's not just pretty, she's a genius too, psychobiology. And what about Dara O'Brien, stand-up comedian, TV presenter? What did he study?
Is it Gaelic?
Theoretical physics. Something that Andre got a first in. Thanks to my amazing panel, to you for watching, and Caroline and the team. Stick around for headliners. I'll see you in 3 minutes.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry for most, but with rain and strong winds moving into the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. A dry evening and night for Plymouth and southwest England, with plenty of clear spells. Staying on the windy side, especially over high ground and along northern and western coasts. For London and southeast England, it will also be a breezy, dry and clear evening with little in the way of cloud in the sky. It's a similar story for Cardiff and South Wales, although a windier evening here than further east, especially over hills and coasts. Temperatures this evening will be around 5 to 7 degrees Celsius. A dry evening with clear skies for Birmingham and the West Midlands. Again, it will be on the breezy side, but overall it will remain settled with temperatures of 5 to 7 degrees Celsius. More of the same across northeastern England, with dry and clear conditions dominating, some breezy or windy conditions at times, and evening temperatures in the range of 5 to 8 degrees Celsius. A largely dry evening